We'll resume business here. Councillor Affleck, if you don't mind. Okay, so where we broke off, we had heard the speakers. Are there any questions for staff arising from comments the speakers made? Oakridge policy statement. Councillor Carr.
Yes, my question has to do with the point that was raised by Ms. Moyer, which is regarding the 3 areas that were added in. I'm sorry, I'm just finding her exact notes, but the 3 areas that were referenced to adjacent sites. I wonder if you could please tell me what it means to be referenced as an adjacent site, what further consultation is going to take place around those adjacent sites.
I'm Kirsten Robinson with the Planning Department. Thanks very much. There was a work program that was completed in February 2014, and that work program did include reference to the 3 adjacent sites on page 6. We said that we would consider inclusion of the Jewish Community Center, the Oakmont Medical Building, and the Petro-Canada Station. At the first open houses, because this was primarily a cost-recovered program by TransLink, we focused the first open house with the ideas brainstorming session on the TransLink site, and we had ideas subsequently at the second open house and then a full massing scheme at the third open house. So there has been substantial consultation through the process on those 3 adjacent sites, and there's rezoning policy in the policy statement that would allow for an enhanced rezoning process for the JCC in particular.
Okay. A second point she raised was around how binding this policy is and referencing the Oakridge planning process and how the policy ended up being quite different from the ultimate proposal.
Sure. Susan Haid, Assistant Director of Planning for Vancouver South. So a policy statement is intended to be used by council to evaluate future change for an area, in particular a future rezoning. And typically council would use that to evaluate that rezoning proposal or proposals. And I think we see this regularly, for example, last night at public hearing in reference to the Marpole Community Plan and the Cambie Corridor Plan. A policy framework or a policy statement really has a similar function. I would emphasize that it is a policy document approved by council. It is not a bylaw as a rezoning bylaw or a zone in terms of a regulatory tool. In the case of Oakridge Centre,
Actually, without going on to sure. Oakridge, the only reason is I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with what happened with Oakridge.
Okay.
But that's a good answer to my question, yes. Thank you. So a third question, cumulative effects of increased density on transit. How do we intend to actually liaise with the Transit Authority in order to get better transit? That was one specific example, but I think amenities in general.
We are working actively with TransLink as part of Cambie Corridor Phase 3 planning and all of the major projects in the Cambie Corridor area. And as part of our community benefits strategy as well, we are looking at amenities that are needed in the area. So we're working very hard in terms of transit needs and transit service. In terms of accommodating growth along the Cambie Corridor and major sites like the OTC, we do see that this is really the right location to densify because of its proximity to transit and to be able to really have effective transit-oriented development.
Yeah, we certainly need more 41st Avenue bus service, big time. And my final question has not to do with what any of the speakers said, but there wasn't an opportunity until now to ask a question. And it came from people actually in the larger community around the opportunity of this site to do something really green. That we're aiming for a city that is 100% renewable energy. I noticed that in the report there is talk of the solar advantages of the centralized park and wanting to make sure that that's, you know, that's where there's going to be a lot of sun and access. And I'm thinking, well, what about the buildings themselves? What about thinking into the future, not that long, where we're going to want to have solar applications on the roofs? Have we thought about sort of some sense of not LEED gold, but beyond that to, you know, really be the 100% sort of renewable city that we are going to be, and using the site as an sort of a first.
It's a great idea, and Kirsten can respond a little more succinctly.
Thank you. We have, as you know, council policy for sustainable large sites, the sustainable large developments policy, and there are 6 categories of things that we consider in that. Site design is one of them, and certainly orientation of the buildings and passive design is part of that thought process. We did have this question at Urban Design Panel. We worked quite hard to address it. This site there are views to the north, and there are, you know, we have a limited width across the site, so it did line up quite well to have many of the buildings kind of on a north-south orientation. There are some challenges with that for solar gain on the west side of some of those buildings, and that can be mitigated through building design. We also thought very carefully about how much sun could get into the courtyards, and the curved street actually helps with that quite a bit. So those larger courtyards at the southern end of the site have quite good solar gain and have quite good livability for the units. But we are thinking how we can do better on all these sites. We've got an enhanced landscape setback which can provide an opportunity for stormwater management on the site. There's a substantial park which can also help to achieve our goals on water management, and then if there are solar panels, we can orient the buildings, the rooftops, to accommodate those in the future.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
And it will connect to neighborhood energy utility as
Great.
well. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Deal?
Yeah, thanks very much. Looks very nice. Just a couple questions around transportation and active transportation. I see it's got the green mobility plan, which I thought was really interesting. How does that, is that the first time we've used that terminology? If not, then I just am forgetting.
No, we used it in Little Mountain as well.
That's right.
For us, at this point in the process, it's really primarily around pedestrian and cyclists and how they access the site and use the site.
And what is the process with working through Active Transportation Policy Council on this? I'm just looking for...
We, at this stage, because it's quite high level in the policy, we haven't worked with the council directly, but we certainly would through the rezoning of the site when that.
As we get into the site-specific things.
That's right.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to that. And then just a note that as we move forward with the green mobility plan, something that's come up in some other developments recently is the number of bike spaces required in new developments. And as we move forward with rezonings, right now it's like 1.25 bikes per unit, and I think it should be at least 1 bike per person anticipated that there's bike parking for, especially if we've got a green mobility plan and it's so well served by transit and bike routes.
But we'll put that on the to-do list.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any further speakers. Is someone prepared to move the recommendations? Was that Councillor Deal? Okay. Any debate? Seeing none, we'll go to the voting queue. Please show whether you support this or not. And I guess we have unanimous support. Thank you very much. Okay. Seems a good idea to move on to some other items. Wouldn't want to rush home. I wouldn't want to do that. Okay. Davie Street, Davie Village Public Space Improvements. Is there a staff presentation? See Mr. McNaney coming over the horizon.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Chair, I think we do have a PowerPoint, right? If you'd like it, we're also happy to.
What's council's will? Would you like to see the presentation?
It's absolutely amazing, but it's a lot of what's in the
everybody
it's a lot
would
of what's
love to,
already
but
in the
it's-
report, so.
Okay, I see some people asking yes, so please continue.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Council. My name is John Grottenberg, planner in the Downtown Division. Tonight I'm going to provide a brief presentation on the Davie Village Public Space Improvements Project, which includes Jim Diva Plaza. First, I'll provide a summary of the recommendations from the Council report. That Council approved the design for Jim Diva Plaza and a project budget up to $2.3 million for completion of Phase 1 of the Davie Village Public Space Improvements, including installation of an accessible automated public toilet. That staff prepare and implement the Jim Diva Plaza stewardship strategy and report back to Council with a broader stewardship strategy for city-owned plazas, supported by funding from the city's Innovation Fund. That the Director of Legal Services prepare amendments to various bylaws to regulate activity in Jim Diva Plaza, and that staff report back to Council with a preliminary business case for an LGBTQ outdoor museum. This is the first significant public space initiative being implemented from the West End Plan. The project also aligns with other city priorities and initiatives, including Transportation 2040 and the Healthy City Strategy. In July of this year, Council approved the conceptual design and the naming of Jim Diva Plaza. So a bit about Jim himself. Jim Diva was a lifetime advocate for LGBTQ rights, co-founder of Little Sisters Book and Art Emporium, a West End resident, and a community activist. He died suddenly in September 2014. Jim is widely recognized for his contributions to the West End community, and in particular, his commitment to freedom of expression. An important idea that emerged during the second phase of the consultation process was the idea of a living legacy statement, which will ensure that Jim's legacy lives on long into the future. The statement was developed by the LGBTQ2+ Advisory Committee in consultation with Mr. Diva's family and friends, and this will guide the overall vision for the plaza space. So it reads as follows: a safe space inspired by Jim Diva's lifelong passion for freedom of sexuality, gender diversity, and the fight against censorship, where LGBTQ people and allies can meet, share ideas freely, dare to dream, and love unapologetically. So the second phase of consultation occurred between August and November of this year to inform the detailed design and plaza stewardship strategy. Overall, there has been a lot of support for the plaza and some of the other changes proposed in the area. We've continued to hear concerns about potential public safety issues, and this was stemming from the pilot project that occurred in 2013 and 2014. Staff have been working closely with the police and other key stakeholders and feel confident that these concerns can be addressed through the design and a comprehensive plaza stewardship strategy, which I'll touch on more later in the presentation. The overall project includes 6 key sub-areas focused around Davie and Butte Streets. Implementation will be phased. Phase 1 includes construction of Jim Diva Plaza and the associated improvements needed to support a permanent pedestrian plaza. Jim Diva Plaza will be a gathering space that accommodates a variety of programming, events, and activities. It will commemorate his life and legacy and will enhance the area's distinct character as a hub for the LGBTQ community. Some of the key features of the plaza design include a distinct unified ground plane from building face to building face, seating and tables organized around existing trees with a central area that adapts for event programming, movable tables and chairs, infrastructure to support programming and events such as power, water, and storage, and the creation of a commemoration for Jim Diva in the form of a speaker's corner soapbox feature. This is an evening rendering. You'll notice the overhead decorative lighting. The installation of an accessible automated public toilet to serve the plaza will also be included in Phase 1. Currently, the automated public toilet on Butte Street just north of the future plaza, shown in the image here, is not accessible for persons with disabilities. In consultation with the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee and other stakeholders, the provision of an accessible toilet was identified as a key component of the project's success. Further work is needed to determine the exact location of the accessible toilet. In addition, staff have continued to explore the development of a broader LGBTQ outdoor museum focused within and adjacent to the plaza. However, through further conversations with stakeholders and staff, some key questions first need to be addressed before developing the content and design for the museum components. And primarily these relate to ownership, operations and curatorial programming, ongoing maintenance, including both regular maintenance and capital replacement, funding, and roles and responsibilities of the parties involved. A specialized consultant will be retained to prepare a preliminary business case that addresses these questions, and staff will report back to council with a recommended approach for the museum. At the request of community stakeholders and to address issues that emerged during the pilot project, a partnership-based approach to plaza stewardship will be tested over a 2-year period. To date, a framework for this strategy has been developed, and the West End BIA has stepped forward as a key partner. The strategy will be completed prior to the plaza's opening through further work with community partners and stakeholders. Over the 2-year period, the partnership model will be monitored and adjusted, giving the community opportunity to build capacity in the area of plaza stewardship. An 8-seat oversight committee of community and business stakeholders, co-chaired by the City and West End BIA, will meet regularly to identify and address any concerns that arise. To implement the Jim Diva Plaza stewardship strategy, staff are seeking funding from the city's Innovation Fund to trial this new and innovative approach to how the city manages, maintains, and supports activation in public plazas. The ultimate goal is to test a stewardship strategy on Jim Diva Plaza, evaluate the successes and challenges, and ultimately develop a stewardship strategy for city-owned plazas. For these purposes, staff are seeking up to $100,000 from the Innovation Fund to support this work, which would be matched 1-to-1 with community partner contributions. To date, $58,500 in community partner funding has been generously contributed by the West End BIA, Hollyburn Properties, the Vancouver Foundation, the Vancouver Public Space Network, and the Downtown Vancouver BIA. We're anticipating up to an additional $41,500 in partner funding for other test cases, which could include the Art Gallery North Plaza or Blood Alley. Related to the stewardship strategy and to help address concerns received from the public and key stakeholders, including adjacent businesses, the BIA, and the police, some minor bylaw amendments are proposed to help effectively manage the plaza space. Primary objectives of these amendments are to prevent vehicles from entering the plaza unless otherwise permitted, to prevent overnight loitering by restricting hours of access to the plaza, similar to West End mini parks, and to minimize exposure to smoking for plaza users. Next steps with the project include construction of the plaza would begin in early 2016 with the goal of having it completed before Pride. Staff will continue to work with key stakeholders to prepare and implement this plaza stewardship strategy, initially as a 2-year trial, and then report back to council by 2018 with a broader stewardship strategy for city-owned plazas. And as well, staff will seek to retain a consultant to develop the preliminary business case for the LGBTQ outdoor museum. And that concludes the presentation. We have staff here from planning and engineering available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You have questions from Councillor DeGenova, among others.
Thank you very much for the very detailed report and all of the work and a lovely presentation that I'm very glad that we saw.
Thank you.
I have a question as the liaison to the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee. I know that the accessible washroom, which is in the final report, it was very important to them. And I was just hoping that you might be able to elaborate on how many other public accessible toilets are available throughout the downtown core, if any.
Sure. Mr. Peacock? I can take that one.
Hi, Mr. Chair and Councillor. I'm Neil Peacock. I'm an engineer in the Strategic Transportation Planning Branch. So I don't have the specific numbers for downtown. That's something we could probably acquire quite quickly, but it's a fairly small number, probably in the order of half a dozen, so 5 or 6 within the area.
And those would be public washrooms that we're talking about?
That's
5
correct.
to 6?
And of those units, only some are accessible and some are, like the one at the location currently, is not accessible, fully accessible.
Okay, I also understand that the location of the accessible public toilet has not yet been determined. That's correct from the report?
That is correct, yes.
And will there be consultation with the committee to ensure that it's in an area that's not only accessible, but that there's some consultation with the committee to make sure the accessible washroom is in a place that would be more desirable to people with disabilities?
Absolutely. We intend to consult with the adjacent business owners. We also have to do a more thorough review of utility conflicts and that sort of thing within the area, find that location.
Fantastic. Another question I had is regarding events and permitting, and I'm just wondering, will the plaza be, the plaza is a public place. It's a place for people to gather. I'm just wondering if the plaza will be a place where people could apply to the city for a permit for an event if they wanted to hold a local community event in that area.
I think I'm going to pass that back to another staff colleague.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson, were you done? I'm sorry. Back on.
So Christina Casse, planner with the City of Vancouver's Viva Vancouver program. Yes, anyone or any group that would like to have an event in the space can do so and can apply to the Film and Special Events Office for a permit.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Stevenson.
Thanks very much. I'll save any comments for the end, but I wanted just to specifically raise a couple of questions that have come through. And probably most of the councillors haven't seen this, but it was an email that went, unfortunately, to our correspondence group, so you might not have had time to look at it because it just came in this afternoon. So it didn't go to your individual emails. But I did send it on to staff because it raises a number of questions that one individual is concerned about, and they handle a whole range of areas. But from my understanding, this is really just a matter of the implementation date and dates rather than anything being put aside. But I know, Mr. McNaney, that you've seen this and we've discussed it, so I thought you might just sum up the concerns that this individual has, and may represent other people. I don't know. It hasn't come up elsewhere.
Sure, Councillor. Kevin McNaney, Assistant Director of Planning. The issues were generally about the overall concept, which included things like a mid-block crossing, an overhead structure above Davie and Butte, and the plaza to be developed north of Butte, on just north of Davie on Butte. They all still remain part of the vision. They all still remain a strongly supported element within the plan for the area. The reason we're before you today is there are a number of elements where there were community agreement, business agreement, funding available, and they're ready to go, like the Jim Diva Plaza, like the accessible toilet, like some of the transportation changes. This doesn't mean we're not pursuing the next phase of work. That is absolutely still on the table. We will be back with you once we do the additional technical planning. For example, the overhead feature at Butte and Davie, we have to work out the details with TransLink about their trolley wires, come to some conclusion with the community about what they would like to see. And one of the other questions in that letter was the LGBTQ museum. We still need to work, as Mr. Grottenberg pointed out, on the details, and we've hired a consultant. We already have allocated $100,000 to help us work through that with the community. So everything is still moving ahead.
And what about the necessity for maybe a champion on the outdoor museum? Is that where I know that really this should be community driven because it's not something staff wants to impose a museum. So where are we with that?
Absolutely. Our goal is to work with our colleagues in cultural services to develop the idea with the community in the hope that the community takes ownership. Everyone thinks it's a great idea, but we'd love to see some sort of nonprofit come together that will own this creature, being this museum, for the long term, and really keep it alive and continue to feed the stories of the community, of the LGBT community in Vancouver, but across British Columbia. So we do want to develop some community champions for it, that's for sure.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the legacy walk that was shown, that's Chicago, isn't it?
That's correct, and that's one example that we've taken a look at among others. And one of the first things for the consultant to do is look at other worldwide examples and bring them to the LGBTQ committee at the city, as well as other interested community members, to build interest and help design what this means in Vancouver.
I just think that idea is so profound. You know, I mean, there's been such a long struggle for LGBTQ rights in the city and successfully fought over the years, and there's many individuals that I would like to see in such an outdoor museum or legacy walk.
Completely agree, and I think Jim Diva Plaza is a great start for that catalyst to tell those stories.
The other couple of issues, one has been covered with the disabilities. I've heard from them, and also the seniors network who also had concerns about that, and then the public space. So I think all three of those have been kind of covered by the staff on this. I can't think of outstanding issues.
We believe we have covered them as best as we can today, and we commit to continuing to work with them to resolve any further issues to make this a success for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All your questions, Councillor Stevenson?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
Yes, thanks very much. One of the questions that came up early on when we first did a referral back to staff to study this further was the need for ongoing programming. Now, not much is made in this report of the role that the West End BIA might play or any other group, but can somebody explain to me about, are they playing a role in programming, or what's the scoop on that?
Yes. The West End BIA is the key partner with the city on creating the stewardship strategy for the space. And one of the critical components of the stewardship strategy is around programming. And we worked quite closely with the West End BIA and other stakeholders in looking at what a feasible sort of targeted amount of programming might be in the space. So working together with an oversight committee for the stewardship strategies development, we will be looking at developing a core group of anchor events to really solidify the programming in the space. You know, moving again towards the idea of about 50 calendar days worth of events. We think that that's a feasible target to achieve in the first year or two.
That's exciting. That's good. Thanks. Thanks for that information. And maybe you're the one that will answer my second one, which is around keeping it clean. Now, I noticed that either it's in the budget, or there's going to be there's a suggested budget that will be an ongoing budget for maintenance. Is that
cleanliness?
Yes.
Yes. So there are existing city services which will take care of, you know, basic litter can emptying and those services. And then in addition to that, we are looking to do micro cleaning in the space because we know things get left behind. It just needs to be kept tidy. So we are exploring that.
Good. And I hope nearby at least good set of recycling bins, right?
Sure.
Good. And in terms of the one issue that was raised by, I think a speaker who may or may not be here, but she sent her comments in beforehand, and that had to do with the concern of restricted hours, so that the restricted hours, which are in the bylaw, I guess there's, I think it's from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Is that it? And that you know, she's the chair of the Vancouver Public Space Network, so her concern really was making sure that public space was public space. But there was a mention of the mini parks, and it would follow the mini parks. Maybe you could explain to me the rationale behind this.
Sure. So essentially what we heard during the pilot project when there were some of the public disorder issues that happened there in consultation with the police and some of the adjacent business owners and others, they recognized that the provisions in the park control bylaw in terms of restricted hours of access overnight, no smoking, if those could be applied to the Jim Diva Plaza space, that would give police the tools that they need if they needed to enforce to ensure that public safety objectives were met. And so because Jim Diva Plaza is going to remain a street right-of-way, we're not using the park control bylaw, but we're instead proposing to amend the street and traffic bylaw to provide the police with similar tools that they can use if there are issues in the plaza. That being said, in terms of accessing the adjacent businesses, passing through late at night, all those types of things, you know, for 99.9% of folks, there will be no issues. It's just to provide the police with the tools that they need if there happen to be issues in the plaza late at night, for example. We want to be proactive in terms of how the space is managed from the get-go, and it can be monitored through the 2-year period as part of the stewardship strategy.
And does that request come from the community? Is that something that was of great interest in terms of your consultations?
We heard from a lot of folks concerns to do with smoking. So that was a concern for a lot of folks, that they wanted to be able to sit and enjoy the space without smoke. And also relating back to the pilot project and the issues that happened there. We've heard that loud and clear this whole year throughout the process, that needs to be really proactively addressed as part of the stewardship strategy, and the bylaw amendments are part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Affleck, you have some questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really surprised and disappointed that the chandelier and the north side's not there, and the history museum, that the museum's not there. So is it cost? Is that why the main reason we just can't get to it? You mentioned this chandelier because of TransLink, but are we talking a cost issue?
Councillor, we will need to come back to council for more additional capital funds, but that's not the issue at this point. The issue at this point, for example, as I mentioned, the overhead feature is community agreement around design, and then working through some of the technical issues with TransLink, which are manageable. With the mid-block crossing, the issue is generally figuring out what type of crossing we want. Is it a signaled crossing? Is it some other safe crossing? And we still need to have those conversations with the community and with the businesses. And then with the north part of the plaza near Butte, we still need to work through some access issues and design issues with the adjacent businesses on that block. So as I mentioned, we had pieces that are ready to go today. We wanted to get moving. The community wants to get moving. That's why we phased it.
There's no timeline though. Is it 2017, 2018, 2016? When are we going to see phase 2? Because I think a lot of the community is disappointed that it's not happening first, a lot of those aspects.
We aren't slowing down with design work. We aren't slowing down with consultation. We've committed to the museum. We're still moving ahead. We're going to continue design work. So we have to come back into the capital planning process with you and determine when the funding would be available.
So maybe next year? Any idea?
I'd just like to speak specifically to the mid-block crossing, which I think is important because it was kind of raised as one of the higher priority items that was outstanding. In that case, it's really at this point primarily a technical exercise for engineering, not as much of a planning design exercise as the plaza has been. For that reason, we feel quite strongly that this is something we can advance and not necessarily have to come back to council. Of course, we will provide that update to council as requested. But once we determine kind of the most cost-effective solution that is safe and comfortable, we will proceed with that.
So no idea. Neither of you have an idea when this will come back as far as phase 2. 2016, 2017, 2018? Give me a number. Anywhere? No? No
Maybe
idea?
2016.
So you're hoping next year? Okay. Just while I've got you there, last week we approved some bike lanes across the city. One was on Butte Street, going right through this plaza. This is could become a very busy bike route as a designated bike route for the city. I'm wondering what impact that might have on the plaza and its use, given that people cycle 24 hours a day. If you're going to be activating that space, what impact that will have on cycling through it at the same time.
Yep.
I noticed there's one bicycle in the picture, but I'm imagining there might be more bikes who might use this.
Yes, and that's a challenge we're well aware of. We've heard it from the public. Again, this is a half block along Butte Street, and we know there's lots more planning to do, walking and cycling improvements. The fact that it's designated as a bike route does not mean that all of a sudden we expect significant increases. This is something we want to get quite good at, these types of flexible spaces that are car-free. Again, I think what's also important to emphasize is that this is a destination. It's community serving. People want to access this destination, and accessing by a safe bike route is also a very important advantage for the location. So it's something we definitely will be interested to monitor.
Seems like it would take a big chunk of that space up, though. A two-way bike route right through the middle of that street, right through a plaza, seems to me much like, especially if it's a commuter route, which it's planned to be, that would take up a lot of the space.
So as it's proposed, there's nothing in the design that actually designates specific space for cycling.
We're driving traffic that way. We're going to be driving traffic down from Robson, down Butte to Burnaby to that bike route, right? So it's the main thoroughfare. It will become the main bike route through the West End at that level, at that height, in that area.
Yeah, so currently, based upon the cycling plan that was recently brought forward, the direction is to advance some planning and design work for that street, and that's still undetermined at this time.
Okay, and Jervis, we're switching to a two-way, correct?
Yeah, so there's an existing diverter at Davie. We're proposing to move that to the block, sort of half block north of the lane. The key reason for that is to provide commercial vehicle access to the lane, which services the grocery store, liquor store, north of Davie.
And you'll put a non-pedestrian activated light there? It'll be a...
So presently, there's an existing pedestrian signal. We didn't have consensus on which, if we wanted to provide upgrades at the time, what we would like to do is as we've identified within the report, is an allocation for monitoring. And once the changes are in place, monitor that and see really the most cost-effective solution for that intersection.
And just the final question, I'm not sure if it's for you, just why park board is not, seems more like a park to me that we're creating, and why a park board is not more of a major player in this, given, and certainly as it moves forward, and once it becomes permanent, it seems like something more that park board oversee within their budget, so therefore extracting it from our budget and being able to have park board pay for all the oversight and operations and so on. Has that been discussed at all?
Yes, the park board's been a very active member through the consultation process, both with the public and internally. There are a lot of operation and maintenance reasons that we've come to this conclusion that it remain a street, but they've definitely been involved in the process and the drafting of the report.
Mr. Chair, if I could jump in too. That's why this is part of an innovation grant, because what we're trying to do is to create a new kind of space here that isn't just a closed-off street and it isn't a park. It's a really active public space that would be a celebration site, but also a place that people will be passing through. And so we want to, that's part of how we see this as an experiment and why you see the innovation grant component of this, Councillor, because we are trying to really learn from this, because we want to see this kind of space all over the city. And ideally, it's really programmed and exciting and interesting, and people are going through it, and people can access it, and it tells a story about our city. And that's, I think that's what we see is so exciting, and it doesn't mean it won't be without challenges, but we hope to learn from this for other plazas across the city.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'll go to our speakers now, seeing no further questions. First speaker is Stephen Reagan from the West End BIA. Oh, sorry, no, I'm wrong again. Jacques Courteau, Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee.
Chair, members of council, my name is Jacques Courteau. I'm with the City of Vancouver Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of that committee. The Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee first wants to extend its complete support for the concept of the plaza and for the lasting tribute that it represents for the life of Jim Davie and the contribution of the LGBTQ2+ community in Vancouver. So we're thoroughly and completely behind that. We also want to take this opportunity to congratulate the project team that worked on this project for the very meaningful consultation that they had with our committee. We met with the people in that team 4 times on September 1, 8, October 8, and November 19. So we've been very well consulted on this, and they were, we see from the report that is before you tonight, they did in fact take our comments very much into consideration, so thank you for the project team. On November 19, the committee passed a motion that basically was as follows: be it resolved that the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee confirms their support of the development of the Jim Davie Plaza as a community meeting place that also celebrates human rights, and be it further resolved that this support is conditional upon the installation of an accessible public toilet. It may surprise some why the importance that we attach to the accessible public toilet. We're very happy to see that it is part of recommendation A of the report. People with disabilities must often plan any outside activity around the accessibility of a toilet because we have our own health issues with regards to those toilets, and we need to be able to access one at short notice when required. We're not able to simply kind of dash off to the park and skip out to go to the bathroom. It doesn't work this way. So we spend a lot of time, many of us, on public transit or handed out, going to and from activities so that the total amount away from a toilet can be quite extensive. Thus, the importance for us to have an accessible public toilet, especially when we're talking about a community gathering place where you intend to spend some time. So again, we're very happy to see that toilet made into the report. As was mentioned by the previous speaker, there's a number of issues that are not yet completely detailed with regards to how the plaza will be set up. And we will continue to work with the project team on those issues, and I'll just list them. First of all, there is some fixed street furniture to be put onto the plaza, and it's important to make sure that the spacing of that furniture allows people with disabilities to transfer onto the benches and chairs that will be provided. Secondly, the lighting must not be such as to cause glare for people with sight impairments. There is access to the area through the bus stops that are on Davie, but it's not clear at this point whether or not those bus stops are sufficiently wide to afford coverage for people who are in power chairs at the bus stop. So something to keep in mind. There have been some parking spots removed from Davie to make space for the plaza. We need some accessible parking spots near that plaza. The soapbox, which is an important feature of the plaza, has to be accessible. The sidewalks that are on each side of the plaza must be sufficiently wide and unencumbered for the passage of wheelchairs. And lastly, the surface treatment of the plaza must indicate to sight-impaired people where the sidewalks and the crossings are. So these are just things that we will continue to work with the project team to make sure they're addressed in the final detail. There is one issue that I want to spend just a bit more time on, and it's the stewardship strategy. The guiding principles are set out in the report, and one of them at Appendix D, Section 4, is that the plaza should be an inclusive, welcoming, and inviting destination in the West End for residents, workers, and visitors of all ages and abilities, and should be public space at all times with no fees charged to get in. This plaza is the first of many that will be studied for the implementation of a stewardship strategy. Whether or not we call this type of a strategy alternative service delivery, outsourcing, contracting out, farming out, it all involves the delivery of certain programming by partners, not necessarily the city directly. And we are somewhat concerned that the strategy not be such as to lose the protection for the people with disabilities that the city now provides. So that when you have events being held by community partners, that full consideration is given for accessibility concerns of people with disabilities who are also going to be on that plaza.
Mr. Courteau, you're a bit over time. You have a couple of speakers, so.
That was the end of my comments.
That's just perfect. Councillor Stevenson will ask you to prolong your remarks.
Okay, if you could finish your remarks.
I think he did.
That
was a joke. Yeah.
I was going to finish.
So first of all, we really appreciate you coming out, and also the work that your committee's done working with also the LGBTQ plus committee, and also the seniors committee, because I've heard from everyone in regards to the issues that you're bringing forward. It's really important. We really appreciate it, and as you can tell by the report and by the attitude of the community, they want to be absolutely inclusive as possible. I think that what I hear you saying is that the staff have satisfied your concerns at this point, as far as they've gone, and you've laid out some other areas that you'll continue to work with them undoubtedly, and they want to work with you. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. In fact, all of the issues I've listed have already been discussed with staff,
Okay.
but because they're not finalized at this point, I'm just putting a marker, and that's it. But we have had very good cooperation with staff.
One of the things that you said that I really I think needs to be emphasized was that this undoubtedly is the first of many. This is like a pilot project, and I'm really grateful for the LGBTQ plus committee for initiating this, for driving this, because it really has become now something that many other communities want to see and want to achieve. That being said, it's extremely important that we get this right, that we do it right, and that we take our time to make sure that we cross all our T's and dot all our I's. There has been a comment earlier from Councillor Affleck that this is very slow, that the staff have been going slow. But as you know from your remarks, we want to make sure this is correct so that other communities then will benefit. There won't be a huge learning curve for other communities, and that the work that you do in this community won't have to be repeated every time. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is. I think we're also looking at this as a very important pilot. As in any other pilot, there will probably have to be adjustments made from time to time to make sure we're still on track. But I think that at this point in time, we are very much looking into this as a very important pilot for all the other city plazas to come.
Well, I know that the community is very, very pleased that your committee has taken this so seriously and has been so helpful, because you're bringing forth things that might otherwise no one would have thought of. And this is really important to us, and we hope that you'll work with that committee in years to come.
I'll bring those comments back to the committee. Thank you.
Please pass that to your committee.
Pilot programs are having a tough time today, so you may not want to go too far down that road. Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you, Mr. Courteau, for coming this evening. And Councillor Affleck and I are your liaisons, and you had sent over the motion that the committee had approved to us. I just wanted to ask you a question about the second part of the motion. I know that in principle you support Jim Diva Plaza and the improvements in this report. However, it did mention in your motion that it is conditional to the accessible washroom. So I just wanted to make sure that I had read that correctly.
Yes, and in fact, we are satisfied that this washroom will not be part, so our condition is removed.
Fantastic. So I'm seeing that. I've also asked our staff earlier this evening in questions as to whether they would be working with your committee and consulting as to where the washroom would go, because right now it's not exactly planned out here in this report, because I guess they're looking for more consultation, more input, more feedback. So I'm guessing that all of the things that you had mentioned, sort of the sidewalks, making sure that it's accessible, that's something that the committee is looking forward to working with staff on, and the LGBTQ++ committee and the Seniors Advisory Committee.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And I also just wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit on the accessible parking spots that you had mentioned.
Yes, I understand from the report that there is a removal of certain parking spots on Davie, and the question that we had was whether or not there would be accessible parking spots close to the plaza, sufficiently close so that people with disabilities don't have to go too far from those spots to the plaza. We've been in discussions with the staff on this one as well. I don't believe that there's an actual answer. We had talked about the possibility using the, which one is that Shoppers Drug Mart or what? Plaza, which is nearby,
yes.
But it's still a bit far. So at this point, I'm not sure we have a finalized decision where that accessible parking would be.
I will ask staff that question a little bit later, and thank you very much for your work. I've enjoyed sitting in and hearing the committee's discussions on this, and I think it's ironic in a sense, and I'm very happy to see an accessible washroom in such an inclusive plaza. So I think this is going to be fantastic. Thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you. That's all your questions, sir. Drew Dennis, our next speaker.
I'm not that tall. Otherwise, fine. Thank you. There we go. Good evening, Chair and Council. I am pleased to be here tonight to speak on behalf of the LGBTQ plus advisory committee and also to share two motions that our committee is happy to bring forward in support of the Davie Village Public Spaces Improvement Report. First, I just wish to take a moment to honor and celebrate Jim Diva and the friend and mentor he was to many of us. I remember my first meeting with Jim. It was about 15 years ago, and I had just been hired as the executive director with Out on Screen, as a young and rookie executive director about to meet this larger-than-life legendary activist and inimitable community hero. I was a little bit intimidated, to say the least. Of course, I had nothing to fear. Jim was quick to put me at ease, and with his welcoming charm and kindred spirit, he had a knack for making you feel instantaneously part of the family. I'm forever grateful, of course, to Jim for all that I learned from him and through him. He could always be trusted and be candid and forthright in his feedback, which I deeply appreciated. And he was always, always incredibly generous with his time and his counsel. And I know that I'm not alone when I say he was a mentor and friend to many of us. So on behalf of the LGBTQ plus advisory committee, I express our deep gratitude to council for your commitment to acknowledge and honor Jim's lifelong activism and his decades of staunch advocacy and service to the betterment of our city and our country, really, in our communities, in the naming and construction of the Jim Diva Plaza. I will now read the two motions as passed unanimously by our committee. The first motion that was passed at our November 26th meeting is in support of the Persons with Disabilities Committee. We were happy to lend our support of the recommendation of the installation of an accessible gender universal public toilet within the Jim Diva Plaza or in the adjacent area. And that is in a compliance of the BC Human Rights Code. So we're very pleased to see that that has been prioritized. The second motion dated at our December 10th meeting, that the LGBTQ plus advisory committee supports the Davie Village Public Space Improvements Report and recommendations as prepared by staff. The committee wishes to acknowledge staff for their inclusion of extensive community and stakeholder engagement, including members from the LGBTQ plus communities and the Friends of the Jim Diva Group. In particular, the committee is pleased to lend its support of the following. Number one, the detailed design for the Jim Diva Plaza. Number two, the continued stakeholder engagement towards the development of the long-term Jim Diva Plaza stewardship strategy as part of the broader stewardship strategy for city-owned plazas. Three, the recommendation for council's approval of a $100,000 grant from the City Innovations Fund, and I just add that it's great to see that fund being leveraged and that there are already identified and confirmed partners to that who have come forward with contributions. That's wonderful to see. Number four, that there is continued stakeholder engagement towards the development of the business case for an outdoor museum in the Jim Diva Plaza or adjacent areas that celebrates LGBTQ plus history, contributions, and the struggle for human rights in Vancouver and British Columbia. Further, that the committee highlights its reservations and welcomes further discussion with staff and council on the following sections. One, the amendments to Street and Traffic Bylaw number 2849 regarding plazas to prevent loitering overnight by restricting hours of access to the plaza. The committee recognizes there may be legitimate reasons for LGBTQ plus community members and others, such as and not limited to those who seek refuge, seek safe refuge during overnight hours. And of course, patrons accessing neighboring businesses. So it's good to hear a little bit more about that already from staff. And secondly, some further clarification to the city's commitment to the outdoor museum, which the committee has understood to be part of this first phase and inclusive within the 2016 capital budget plan. And again, we've heard a little bit more from that and interested to hear a bit more. So thank you again to staff for your extensive and thoughtful work on these public space improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Your questions from Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks very much for coming by today, Drew. We really appreciate you coming in, and also the work that you do as co-chair of the LGBTQ committee. It's a substantial amount of work, I know, and a great variety of people, and in our community, they like to discuss with one another fairly vigorously, and have done so again on this issue. But I guess I would like to ask you about the consultation, not only with you, but within the community, because often people who disagree with something that is before us, a report or a rezoning or what have you, always say, well, there hasn't been enough consultation, it needs more consultation. But I don't get that sense at all with this report, and I would find it really helpful for you to just elaborate a bit on the consultation that you've experienced and know that's gone on throughout the community.
Sure. Yeah, the committee was very grateful. We've had John Grotberg in particular visit our committee now, I think 2 or 3 times with presentations and updates as the process has unfolded. As well, our committee's been invited to various, many of, if not all of, the stakeholder engagement meetings and opportunities, and I know myself and others of our committee have been able to attend some of those, not all, but some of those. So there has been an ongoing conversation through the process that has been quite great.
Thank you. Councillor Affleck, in one of his questioning periods, indicated that he thought the staff was kind of slow on this, that this report wasn't achieving what he felt was enough in a number of areas. But you've been pretty close to this and have seen how this has developed. Have you had qualms about that? Other than, obviously, I'm going to ask the staff at the end, you know, just what the timing is and how that's transpired. But as far as the committee is concerned, have you had concerns? I was going to comment personally.
No, I mean, my understanding is I don't think that there's been delays. I think that it seems that the process has been following the timetable as has been laid out by staff. I think sometimes as the timing is based on, for instance, the report became public on December 9th, and we had a committee meeting on December 10th. So some of the reservations that we've highlighted, there just wasn't ample opportunity to really have further discussion or clarification before we were able to have a fulsome committee discussion, and I think that's just the reality of timing sometimes as these things play out. On the timing piece, it's maybe a little bit different than your question, Councillor Stevenson, but on that timetable piece, we do share, there's already been concern raised about the future phases and what the timetable and the commitment to that is, and that definitely was discussion, and there was some concern there from our committee that if those pieces were no longer part of the 2016 capital plan, is there a clear sense and commitment of timetable and funding that we can expect?
Okay, well, it's good to know that as far as what's transpired so far, you haven't experienced the dragging of the feet or anything from staff. I've experienced staff being so committed to this, in fact. But I will ask staff, because I think that is an appropriate question about the future phases. They've said this is getting phased in. Some of it depends on capital plan and so on, but what they're looking for. And also, I realized you did get the report on the 9th of December and met on the 10th. And I've asked staff about that already, and they had an explanation that's very understandable as to how these things unfold. But I'll ask them again about that when they come through. But previous to that, there's always been ample time, and they've given full explanation when they've come to the committee and so on.
Yes, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks so much for coming. Your work and your input are both incredibly valuable, and for the, representation of the committee. You mentioned something as a sort of question needing follow-up, and that is the after-hours access issue. I don't think I quite got the complete range of concerns you have about that, or questions that you want to see answered about that. You mentioned something about homeless. I'm not quite sure what, so if you could give me a little more detail, I'd appreciate that. Then I can follow up with the staff.
Yeah, sure. I think we've heard a little bit already previously tonight, some similar questions. I think some of the discussion that we had at our committee meeting was, and I'll give you a specific example that arose. Community has their GAB youth drop-in on Wednesdays and Friday evenings, and I think the Friday night group, which usually is an age group of about 18 to 24, and this is young queer and trans people, their meetings, gatherings probably wrap up around 9 o'clock, 9:30. So I think it is that concern that when we think about Jim Diva and the plaza and how we want to honor that public space, that we would hope that if there were young queer or trans people or other people that are convening and hanging out, as young people are apt to do, in that area past 11 o'clock p.m., that we wouldn't have a situation, that police essentially, as they're enforcing those amendments to the bylaw, would be using their discretion and not then pushing young queer or trans people out of that area. So I think it's that distinction to better understand how that might be enforced and to what discretion police would use around where they would see something as a concern versus people safely gathering.
Right. So during the trial phase, I did have people call me or email me, et cetera, around some concerns over overnight use, whether it be by homeless, whether it be around drugs. Those are, there were some concerns around that use, but you're saying that there's a big distinction and seeking clarification around the implementation of that. Not that you're saying don't go ahead with it, but clarify how it intends to be applied?
Yes, that's correct. And I believe within the appendix in the suggested amendments, there's wording speaking around traversing through. So if anything other than traversing through is considered loitering, then that I think would be a concern.
Got it. Okay, I'll ask questions. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi. Just to clarify for Councillor Stevenson's sake, I wasn't commenting on the speed at which staff were working. I was commenting on the phase 2, and I think you might have heard the staff committed to phase 2 coming to us in 2016, which is good news. I guess the museum, it seems from what I'm hearing from the community, they're quite disappointed that this isn't part of phase 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think when we, our sense from reading the staff report, and again, it's just unfortunate that we haven't had much chance to get some direct clarification from staff before our committee had a chance to meet. But the assessment from reading the report seems to be that the priorities have been outlined as first, Jim Diva Plaza, second, the outdoor museum, and then third, that overhead feature. And so I think there's a little bit of concern and perhaps disappointment that we're not seeing those within the current capital plan. So then that then begs the question, will there be issues around funding allocations or resources for those items down the road?
You're worried to get lost.
Yeah, exactly. So I think hearing a clear commitment on when the report back timeline would be, or a commitment from council would be helpful.
Great. Well, I think we heard that from staff, but maybe we can get some embedded. We'll see how it goes. The bike lane, I think you may have heard me asking about that because it's going to be done first, I think, because of the decision we made last week. Is there any concern about the bike lane and its impacts on this space at all within the community, and how, I mean, we have Jervis 1 block away. Perhaps we could look at that as an opportunity. I'm trying to get my head around a significant number of bikes burning through there to get to Butte, to get to Burnaby, and that impact on social gathering space.
Sure. Yeah, similar questions arose within our committee discussion as well. We didn't really have a clear, there wasn't any clear direction though or anything that came, or thoughts or feedback that came from our committee, but we did sort of discuss that and wondered, from previously attending some of the stakeholder meetings, my understanding was that the anticipation is that space would have programmed events occurring maybe about 10% or something like that. Throughout the year, 10% days of the year. And so when you think about if it's a quiet space where people watching or sitting and gathering, that bikes coming through that may not be an issue. The issue might, of course, occur when there's a larger group convening. So, but we didn't have any direct feedback just around that area.
Sort of the same questions I'm asking.
Yeah, similar questions. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Affleck. Thank you.
Great.
That's all your questions. Stephen Reagan is next.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Council. We are, we thought it would be good morning maybe, but no, I'm just kidding. Very pleased to be here. My name is Stephen Regan. I represent the businesses, the property owners in the West End business improvement area. I want to come here and make three points on the report as tabled. First of all, I'll say that we are coming in support of the report and the direction. So that's there. The board is excited for the opportunity. Two acknowledgements. One is on the staff side. We've worked a lot, and I know how much we've interacted with John and Neil and Christina and Hale and everyone on this project. Lots of commitment to getting this right. So appreciate all the time and effort and the extra phone calls with me and conversations. The other one is the acknowledgement that the West End itself was nominated and awarded the greatest neighborhood in Canada. So it kind of, it's a good thing, and it sort of speaks to sweat the small stuff. You know, it is a great neighborhood, and now we're sweating the small stuff. You know, accessible washrooms and bike lanes and those kinds of things. These are all the details that kind of make or break. So with those caveats said, there's really three things. I want to talk just quickly on Davie Street, quickly on the design, and quickly on the stewardship strategy. You know, the heart of Davie Village is Davie Street. And we're proposing that, you know, a fair amount of work still needs to be done on Davie Street itself, how the plaza connects to it. And we've proposed a pilot around commercial patio zones in the Davie Village. We've sent some information to staff, and we're quite interested in seeing how that may integrate into the plaza. So we've done a fair amount of work. There's quite a detailed analysis we've done and report. We've shared it with staff. So we're interested in moving forward with that. And we have a commitment to kind of get a working group figuring out Davie Street. The Jim Diva Plaza is the icing on the cake, but the cake is Davie Street. We need to get that street right. It needs to function really well. The plaza design itself is it's a complicated piece. It's got accessibility issues, it's got business issues, got a number of things. At a very high level, maximum flexibility is kinds of the things we want in the space, being able to use the space to celebrate, for businesses to thrive, for bike lanes and others. So the more flexibility in the design we have, the better. There's a fair amount of that in there, but anytime we kind of lock elements down, it starts to constrain, and it's a relatively small space. Support for vibrant commercial patios is kind of high on the priority. We see that commercial element of that plaza is critical, and enhanced lighting, whether that's sunlight, decorative lighting, or functional lighting. And it's not a small point to think about being in a space and being able to find the sunny spots and enjoy the warmth of a nice spring day. The kind of on the top line on the design, we really want this as part of the commercial street, the commercial fabric. We really do want it to read as a plaza, not a park. We really want to create that energy and the vibrancy and the connectedness in the community. So that relates to tree canopy, tree cover, what we can grow in the area, and how the space is used. There certainly is no pressure from the West End BIA to rush through and get anything done by a certain deadline. We would rather have the project done right and everybody be comfortable and satisfied that we've got it. We love the idea of being a guinea pig in this in the process. We think we're a good organization to be helping to test and innovate. That's not a problem at all, but certainly we don't feel any pressure from us that you need to get certain things done by a certain time. Quickly on the stewardship strategy, we're really pleased to be working with City. We think the partnership is going to be amazing. We're going to learn a lot. I have asked staff, I said, the sooner we can get out of the gate, the better. We don't want to wait till July. If there is an opening date in July, we need to be working in January. So we'd like that committee to be out of the gate as soon as possible. And we would also suggest that during the final detailing of construction and other things, that maybe through that committee we can be engaged in some of the things. As you get into the groundwork and uncover some issues, you're going to be making modifications and changes, and through that group we think we can be a real tremendous asset. We've already started. We've got a consultant's report that we worked on that's got a number of recommendations and ideas, so We've shared that in draft with staff, so we're ready to go. Thank you.
You got questions from Councillor Affleck? Did you want to ask a question, Councillor Affleck, or you want to last time? Okay. Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks, Mr. Reagan, for coming in, and thanks for your input overall this time. I think you and I first spoke when the whole idea initially emerged, and you indicated how important it was for the BIA to be part of it and to be influencing it. And I would say that you've had a huge influence, frankly, because initially I was really keen on a park, and and that's moved over time to Plaza, and for all the reasons. I know that at times you thought that your input was minimal, or were concerned that it might be minimal, I should say. But in fact, that's just been the opposite, so I thank you for that. I also thank you for what you said just a moment ago, that this needs to be done right. I mean, this really is going to be showcase for the BIA and showcase for the West End and for the LGBTQ committee, so it needs to be done right. And not that we want to drag our feet, but we want to make sure that. So at the end of the day, can you give us any other, is there anything outstanding now that you think that we've missed, haven't included, and haven't been aware of? I know because you came to me several times with some issues that you thought that we hadn't seen as clearly as we might.
Yeah, I mean, it is getting late, right? So there's a whole list of things that we would like to see landed. You know, some of it we don't see all the funding constraints. We don't see the internal dialogue with some of the other committees. I know we really would like to see that kind of sunlight into the space on the other side of the upper canopy. We'd love to see, you know, how weather protection and sound mitigation can be incorporated. There's constraints to budgets and limits, but we think with the Innovation Fund and a little bit of work and experience, we can get some of these things right. I think one of the conversations we've had in the past is around, you know, how do we fund all of our aspirations? How do we get everything, you know, that we want, that makes sense for the space? And I'm really pleased to see the formula that looks like it's emerging, where the city is coming in and initially helping, you know, get a lift through the an innovation, you know, phase of things. But eventually it's good, you know, the city's contribution, you know, outside of capital will largely, I imagine, be through incremental investments in sanitation and graffiti removal and street furniture and policing and those kinds of things, permitting and licensing. The BIA, and I think other BIAs that I've spoken to, we're willing and able to get into the programming space. That's kind of our forte. And, you know, make sure we're working with the community groups and outreach and the spaces are vibrant. The third component of that is other groups, whether it's grants or nonprofits or businesses, for example, like Hollyburn, who come in and say, listen, we can be a partner with a little bit of recognition. I think we can do a lot with that third funding stream. So a little bit on the city, a little bit with the BIA on our promotional side, and kind of council giving us a framework to work with partners like Hollyburn to get all the incremental things done. So that would be very pleasing to us to make sure we've got that framework. We don't have to look over our shoulders when we're talking to a TELUS or a Hollyburn or some other group that wants to be helping us program the space.
And I know that you have members of the LGBTQ committee on your BIA, and they're very much aware of the issues that the community are concerned about as well. It might be an idea sometime for you to come to the committee, when the advisory committee, when we're dealing with some of these issues that directly relate to your work, and make a presentation. I know they'd appreciate it.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks.
You, Councillor Carr.
Mr. Chair, thanks so much, Mr. Reagan, for everything. I mean, you're just a great group down there. I love the fact that you say that we're ready to go. You got your
love the
report,
West
everything.
End. We're ready to go.
Well, I just was driving down Davie the other day, and there was already something happening there. I don't know what it was, but there were lots of people gathered there. There was some things.
Was that Friday night?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a Lumiere festival.
There we go.
So,
There we go. And you know what? It really struck me how when a place is activated, it makes you want to like stop, get out, find out. You know, just it's a very engaging thing in a community to see a group of people having fun in a public spot.
In December.
Yeah, in December. Well, it
can
wasn't
happen.
raining though. You know.
We were there Saturday too.
Okay.
It was raining Saturday.
No, my real well, beyond saying thank you and a really big thank you, I would like to know a bit more about how you envision that partnership that you've offered to work with the city around programming. 50 days. Do you anticipate a particular start time to this? You maybe just spell it out a little bit. That's a huge piece, I know.
We took a run at this probably since, well, probably a year and a half, ever since the pilot. We've been testing and trying things and working on events. This is our second December in that space, activating sessions. We do have a report. We're just finalizing this. It'll be shared with staff and through staff to council. You know, we think 50 days is you know, something to be ambitious about. I think the feeling was we wanted to do more out of the gate to make sure, you know, we had a successful space, to make sure that the community was engaging with it, and that we can, you know, we can make it work, and then there was a positive energy and a positive feedback loop around it. We didn't want to kind of come at it and underinvest, be penny wise and pound foolish. So we think we've got the right partnership. The city has got lots of good ideas. There's lots of, you know, strong community partners. You'll hear from some of them. We've got in this report probably 15 ideas. Some of them are special events. Some of them are ongoing. Some of them require, you know, minimal supervision and support. But everything requires a little bit of somebody's time, effort, and funding. So, you know, we think we've got a good starting point, and Christina is a you know, amazing a level of energy and ideas around this. We really appreciate the access to the Innovation Fund. You know, we're keen to go. We know we're going to learn a lot and stub our toes from time to time, but I think we've got a good starting point.
I'd love a copy of that report. If
Yes,
you've got some
yes.
extra copies, that'd be great. Thank you.
You bet.
Councillor Deal.
Actually, I was going to ask you about programming, and it's been well answered already, so I'll just say maybe you can find a permanent home for Luna from
Yes,
Lumiere,
yeah.
suspended above the plaza there instead of a chandelier. That might work. Anyway, just throwing it out there, you know, and if you can share that report as well with me, that would be great. Thank you very much. And thanks for all of your work. I know that you had some.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sam Turcott, Disability in BC. Thanks, Mr. Reagan. You're all done.
Hello, Sam Turcott, Disability Advocate and Program Manager with Disability Alliance BC. Our organization promotes the interests of people with disabilities in Vancouver around the province. We wish to express our support of the recommendation that a new accessible washroom facility be installed in the vicinity of the thank you very much. In the vicinity of the proposed Gym Diva Plaza, and that city staff will work with the Disability Advisory Committee in initiating this recommendation. The existing facilities on the north corner of Davie Street, we've already observed, are not accessible to people with disabilities currently. This includes a range of people with different disabilities, and particularly individuals who have disabilities which impact their mobility. There are many reasons to support the development of accessible city infrastructure. Among these reasons, some examples include that doing so affirms that residents and visitors with disabilities are equal individuals with the same rights as the general public. It fosters a culture of inclusivity in our city. It sends a clear message that Vancouver, as well as its elected officials and staff, care about the interests of people with disabilities in the city, and it also fulfills the obligations that Vancouver has under the BC Human Rights Code. Day to day, most able-bodied people never have to think about whether or not a public washroom facility is going to be suitable to their needs, but certainly we all know what it's like to need to use the washroom and not be able to. I hope that's something that none of you have experienced today. It has been a long day. You know, with that in mind, The Davie corridor is certainly one of the central thoroughfares in Vancouver. And from our perspective, there's certainly no reason that in 2015 that any member of the public, including people with disabilities, shouldn't have access to a suitable public washroom that will meet their needs. So for these reasons, we congratulate council staff and city council for making this recommendation, and we strongly support its approval. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. You don't have any questions, but thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Bert Hick. Was here earlier. Not able to stay, okay. Our next speaker was to be Jean Morton, and she's unable to stay. She did send an email quite recently, and it's in your inbox, so you should take a look at that. And Jill Weiss is our next speaker.
Gay, lesbian, bi, trans, and two-spirited people have endured enormous discrimination in most of the world for a very long time. It is thus really important and deeply heartening to see the city recognize the achievements of Jim Diva and of the LGBTQ+ community in the ongoing fight to eradicate hatred and discrimination and the ongoing fight for human rights and equality. This is a really important project before you today. It is a lovely gathering place in the heart of vibrant Davie Village, of course, but really, it's much more than that. What's extraordinary about this is that it is also a celebration of human rights and an effort to encourage real community and more human rights work. It's a commemoration of the lifelong work of Jim Diva for human rights and encouragement for people to be involved and talk and listen to each other with the built-in soapbox. And the Outdoor Human Rights Museum is a reminder to us all of the work the LGBTQ+ community has done to eradicate hatred and discrimination, and that we still have an ongoing struggle to make our world one of equality, inclusion, and human rights for every person. I think this is a wonderful vision and project, and a deep part of making our city a place of justice, real connection, and a place where every person belongs. And that's why the staff recommendation to install an accessible automated toilet is so important. For years, the public toilet at Butte and Davie has been available only to some parts of the public. It cannot be used by blind people with guide dogs. It cannot be used by people who use a wheelchair. It cannot be used by people who use a walker, and it cannot also be used by people with a large build. The West End has one of the largest concentrations of gay and lesbian people in Vancouver, and that's why the placement of the Jim Diva Plaza makes so much sense. But the West End also has one of the largest concentrations of persons with disabilities, of seniors, of whom 47% have a disability, and of persons living with HIV, who often have developed a disability. And all of those people have not been able to use the bathroom there for a very long time. So it is another tribute to Mr. Diva and his work on human rights that staff are recommending that the current non-accessible public bathroom be remedied and that an accessible automated public washroom be installed. In Vancouver, we recently spent a year working on reconciliation with First Nations people, acknowledging the horrible wrongs that have been done, listening and talking, and working to develop more than words, a way to work on righting those wrongs and ensuring that we have a city where it doesn't happen again to anyone, a city where the human rights of everyone are respected. And that's what the Jim Diva Plaza is also about. It's not just a community gathering place. It is also a place that builds real community, that acknowledges the wrongs that have happened to LGBTQ+ people, and works to make a world where that doesn't continue to happen to anyone. And that's why the staff recommendation to install an accessible toilet is so important. It carries on the work of Mr. Diva and says that we will take action to reverse this wrong and work for a city where everyone, LGBTQ plus people, First Nations people, people with disabilities, seniors, young people, people of different ethnic backgrounds, all people are included and have equal rights. And so I heartily endorse this project, acknowledge the wisdom of staff and all the people who have worked on this vision. And I ask that Council unanimously approve this report and recommendations for a very different community place that will make a difference.
Thank you. Councillor Genova has some questions for you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. I know that we've had the chance, had the chance to hear some of your comments at the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee meeting, and you raised a very important point about the accessible washroom. And I had asked a previous speaker some of these questions, but I'm just wondering if you might be able to, as past chair of the committee, shed some light on how difficult it can be to find an accessible washroom in the downtown core for persons with disabilities who might not be able to use a coffee shop or be a patron of a restaurant.
Right. Well, I mean, there isn't one. The public washroom is not accessible, so it's not an option.
So there are no there are no washrooms that are completely accessible.
There are no public
washrooms.
Public washrooms that are accessible in the area.
That's good to know.
I mean, I lived there for 45 years.
Thank you.
So
I asked staff, and I know they were going to get me that information, so that's very helpful to know.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you to elaborate a little bit, but from just sitting in on the meetings and sort of observing what was going on, it was really felt that because this space is so special and it's there to honor the memory of Mr. Diva, that on top of being an inclusive and welcoming space, that it should be accessible to all. And do you feel that with the ongoing consultation between our staff and all of the committees as to the placement of the washrooms and the other issues brought up by Mr. Courteau, that it really will truly be that place?
Yes, I do. And I think it's been a very good consultation, and I think we're really, really pleased with it. And I should add that the other non-accessible washrooms in the city of Vancouver should also be either replaced with an accessible one or have one added to that.
That's what you answered my next question. I was going to ask if you felt this could be a model for other public spaces in other communities with accessible washrooms.
Well, and the BC Human Rights Code, as several other people have mentioned, should be followed, and any public service has to be available to all members of the public. That's basically what Section 8 of the BC Human Rights Code says.
Thank you very much for coming and for staying through this long evening.
You're welcome. Is that it?
Thank you. That's all your questions. Our next speaker is Paula Qualitza. Is Ms. Qualitza here? All right, thank you. I missed that. John Oldham. Is John Oldham here? Okay, welcome, Mr. Oldham.
Good evening, Chair, Mayor Robertson. The last time I spoke to council was quite a long time ago. I got a shock today at one point. I went downstairs to grab a coffee and a snack and found that such place no longer existed. The room's there, but nothing else is. I'm speaking tonight from two perspectives. First of all, the organization I work for, the Voice of the Cerebral Palsy of Greater Vancouver, was notified about an open house, thank you, on November 19th by Jill Weiss, who emailed us. And I got down there on behalf of the organization because I'm on the board, and I work there in a different capacity. and actually finally got to meet Jill officially, and then I had a chat with this gentleman on my right here about the situation with the washroom, and I guess sort of burned his ear off for a while as I gave him a brief history of the issue of disabled rights in the province and the city, and how that washroom that's currently sitting on the northeast corner epitomizes the lack thereof. And so, yes, we as an organization definitely support the report that's being presented to you by staff. And we'll definitely be glad to see the installation of the automated toilet and be able to make use of it. So first of all, thank you for that. Secondly, as I've been sitting here listening tonight, it brought back a lot of things and a lot of connections. I grew up in the West End. I was chatting with somebody today, and they were asking me how old I was, and I told them. And you know, watching all the changes down there and the effects of different things that have happened. And one of the issues that came to me very strongly was when Drew spoke and talked about, you know, the possibility that there might be groups of young gay GBLT people in the plaza, you know, after 9 or 10 o'clock at times. And it struck me how important it was to realize that this, first of all, is a plaza. It's not a park. It has a much, much wider use, hopefully. The park normally would be where, you know, the city can shut it down at 10 o'clock at night and nobody's allowed in there, etc. But it also is important to realize that probably one of the most partying groups of people you're likely to meet are the GBLT community. And I got involved initially in what a lot of people then and still now consider somewhat odd angle. But when the AIDS crisis first hit Vancouver, a group of friends of mine and myself became involved as a result of praying about it and as a result of being actively involved in the ministry and saying, God, what do we do? And going down and getting to know people in the palliative care unit. And thanks be to God, some of those people are still alive today. And some of those people are going to be partying in that plaza. So a personal concern I have is, while I recognize that there is a need for some kind of control, that control be very carefully exercised, because that community is going to use that plaza. I did have something very specific, and I shared it basically in terms of work. This is just coming from me. I'm often on Davie Street, a minimum of 2 nights a week. I meet with friends at Denny's. I meet with friends up and down Davie Street. I discovered the Hanoi North Bistro last week, and I recommend it to you all. It's really good. So what I'm saying to you is, recognize that this is something very new, as has been said, something very different, and that something that has to be treated very differently than most things usually are. To ensure its success and to ensure that the importance of what this plaza is about goes on and on and on.
Thanks, Mr. Oldham. That's
Thank you.
your overtime. And Councillor Stevenson has a question for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a bit of an effort to get up to City Hall from West End. There isn't direct bus routes for us. So we really appreciate you doing that. And also to let you know, and the rest of the council, in case they haven't seen it, that we have received a very nice email from Jean Morton with the Cerebral Palsy Association of BC. That's just come in this afternoon. And I've forwarded it on to staff because I think it's very important that this association has come forward like this in support and with the concerns around the washrooms that you're speaking of. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, if I may, Councillor, I got to meet Jean this afternoon before she left and talk. We were with, I guess you'd call them sister organizations. She's with the Cerebral Palsy Association of BC, and I have been involved with them in the past and on their board, and I'm here representing the voice of the cerebral palsy of Greater Vancouver.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that both of you are so concerned about this.
It's important to us.
Yeah, yeah.
As Jill said, the number of available public washrooms, not just downtown,
yeah,
but in the city,
yeah,
that a disabled person can make use of is zero.
Well, hopefully this will be a model, as we're saying.
I hope so.
For the city. And also thank you for the work that you've done going back a few years. I remember the years in palliative care really well. I was a pastor on that ward.
You were?
And so I know what that was like in those years. And as you say, there's a few friends still hopefully going to be able to make use of the plaza.
Yes.
But many more, unfortunately, aren't with us any longer.
That's true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Jim Balakshan. And then number 9, Katrina May. And that's all I have on the list.
Thank you, Chairperson, Mayor, and members of Council. My name is Jim Balakshan, and I use the pronouns he, him, and his. I am a community programmer at Gordon Neighborhood House, and I live 1 block away from the plaza. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Neighborhood House, as I have helped coordinate a dozen or so events at the site, including games nights, art markets, and workshops. Firstly, I'd like to commend the staff and committees for their extensive work on this project. They have included a broad cross-section of the community with diverse stakeholders and various interests. The multiple open houses, design revisions, and stakeholder meetings have already generated a great sense of ownership for the plaza within the community. Gordon Neighborhood House is very supportive of the recommendations for this project. It will create a much-needed gathering place and a programmable event space. As Christina mentioned, at G&H, we are very interested in making this plaza as vibrant and as eventful as possible. However, like many organizations, we have a very limited capacity to extend beyond our day-to-day activities. I encourage staff to continue working with organizations to find practical ways to make this space more usable for community groups to host events and program the space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions, but thank you for your patience and for coming. I'm sorry, I don't see any questions, but I was thanking you for coming and for your patience. Katrina May.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Chair, and members of Council. My name is Katrina May. I'm here today representing Hollyburn Properties. We are a rental housing provider and developer with a long history in the West End. Hollyburn has operated rental housing in the West End since 1978. We are proud to represent and house over 6,000 residents in the City of Vancouver in 55 rental communities. I'm here today to speak in favor of the creation of Jim Diva Plaza. Thank you to the City of Vancouver for inviting Hollyburn to participate in this initiative. We're proud to honor Jim Diva and his years of community work and activism in the LGBTQ+ community with a $10,000 contribution. We have worked hard to cultivate partnerships with a variety of local community organizations such as Gordon Neighborhood House, Covenant House, King George Secondary School. We're also active members of the West End BIA. Our aim is to enhance accessible and inclusive living spaces in the neighborhoods in which we're privileged to operate. We look forward to using Jim Diva Plaza ourselves. We look forward to the plaza further animating and enriching the vibrant West End community. And our residents will certainly take advantage of this space as well. And finally, we hope that the City of Vancouver staff will consider including Hollyburn Properties again in future community initiatives. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming and for that news. I don't see any questions, but really appreciate your patience staying this late. Oh, Councillor Stevenson has a question. Oh, it's for staff. Okay, so now, I'm sorry, Ms. May. I keep, it's fatigue. So we do have questions for staff from Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Carr. Why don't you go ahead, Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you very much. Mr. McNerney, if I might just follow up on some of the questions. First of all, in regards to the committee receiving the finalized report on the 9th and meeting on the 10th, just an explanation of how that happens.
As you know, Councillor, it takes some time to get reports out, to get all concurrence from various departments. We got the report out as soon as we could. Unfortunately, the timing meant the first committee with the report out we could get to the committee was the next day, and that really was unfortunate. The report didn't have a lot of new information necessarily from what was presented at the open houses in October, and so we tried to continue to build that understanding, but we do acknowledge it's a challenge. And it's a challenge because if council chooses to approve this, we need to get underway with construction to get underway for next summer. So basically, crews are on standby pending a decision to start construction throughout the winter, so we needed to get to you this December.
So the push really was to make sure it came here today so that we can start.
Yes, we appreciate the patience of the committee, and they've been amazing as we've worked through all these issues, because as you can imagine, we're pushing all sorts of things and boundaries in different directions to get this together in a way that's right for the community.
Great, that's helpful. Now, on to the issue of timing. I apologize actually to Councillor Affleck if I misunderstood his remarks. I thought he was indicating the staff was slow, but if that's not the case, that's wonderful, because I haven't experienced that at all. So maybe getting at your questions around timing, Councillor Affleck. Do we need to embed in somehow this report what the timing might be? Is there a way you might be able to bring us a memo, or how can you give us kind of some guidelines on this timing issue?
I was just actually talking with my other colleagues in engineering and such, and we've had essentially this team of 4 people almost full-time on this for several months. We are very much committed as staff to advance this work. Thinking it through a bit, as you've heard from engineering, I think we can move forward fairly soon on the mid-block crossing. And we're going to launch the request for proposals right away in January for the museum side. I think what I'd suggest is about mid-year, just before the construction is done, after we've established the stewardship committee, after we've continued to work with the BIA and all these groups here, that we report back to you and give you an update memo or some sort of way. And as I committed earlier, I think by the end of the year, we can report back. And I think that's a great time because the plaza will have been open for a number of months. We can talk about any issues related to some of the bylaw changes. We'll be able to give an update on the programming and the stewardship and how it's worked for a certain amount of time, and report back fully on the museum component. So my suggestion would be a mid-year memo and a report by the end of the year, and that's what we commit to.
That's very, very helpful. And I can't speak for Councillor Affleck, of course, and wouldn't even try, but that certainly satisfies my concerns and hopefully yours. Just a little bit more on this museum. You heard Drew say there was disappointment in the community, or some disappointment. I think a lot of people, that's a key part, because we see really recognition of the community through that. I'm sure you understand that there's that disappointment, and have been reaching out to the community in regards to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think what I'd say is museums have art, but museums are an art unto themselves, and we really have to honor the stories from the community, and we need to get that right. And we need to work with our committees, but we need to build a group of local champions who can help us to tell the stories that the community needs to tell. and we need to find the right consultants with our cultural services staff to tell that properly. So this is, once again, something I don't want to see rushed. We're fully committed. We have the money committed already to start the process, and we need a bit of time to ensure we get it right.
Thanks. That's a wonderful statement. I'm sure that Councillor Deal likes that one. Museums are an art in and of themselves. So this champions issue is obviously key. I'm hoping that Drew is listening to this, and maybe the committee would be involved in raising up champions within the community and in the committee to work with Mr. McNanny and the whole team, because unless we have those champions, it's going to be difficult to succeed here. Is that right?
It's much easier with people in the neighborhood helping us get it right.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Carr.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Chair. My first question has to do with the questions raised around the discretion with which we can expect the VPD to apply the after-hours limitation on people there.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, we did receive that feedback throughout the day, and I would like to highlight first off that these are in draft form and that there are opportunities. When we look at enactments, we're primarily targeting that date in advance of Pride, so we have some time to sort through this. As we indicated, these were done in consultation with groups like the VPD, so I think what we were thinking, chatting here, was that we would look to the Community Policing Center and invite those representatives to work with the appropriate advisory committees and make sure that we're on the same page about what is discretion and what's really the primary objective of these amendments.
I think that sounds like a good plan, and I expect that we'll get a report back on that when we get the report back. Great. Second question, the Persons with Disabilities Committee had some very specific goals, I mean, very specific around the design of the plaza, the space, the street. Are you intending to work with them over the next few months in terms of it? There's a lot of sort of direction around engineering, around the placement of things. And also, you know, I was very caught too by the, even things like the you know, whatever the ground cover is, and, you know, so is that going to happen?
Yes, at this stage, we have what we call a detailed design. We know there are details that still need to be sorted out. We are learning a lot through this particular process about how we build these types of amenities in public spaces. So yes, we would look to all those opportunities, regular committee meetings, to provide those updates. Having said that, we have a pretty aggressive schedule. We're hoping to begin construction within February. So, and of course, a very aggressive completion date of June or July. So we are certainly keen to do that as well. There's other issues related to parking. We've identified some potential locations, so we plan to bring those back to the committee and get their response to those.
I'm glad to hear that there's that aggressive schedule, because I know the aim is for Pride in August, or beginning of August, end of July. But what about also the sort of aggressive schedule around the programming? Because we've certainly heard from Mr. Regan that there is a concern to get things going for that period of time. They need to start in January. Is that happening at that pace too?
Yes, with respect to programming, there is going to be quite a bit of planning work done starting in January. In fact, the city has already sat down with the West End BIA and started looking at what the terms of reference is for the group, the objectives and the goals of the group moving forward, and creating that key anchor group of that key programming for the space is the top priority for the first few months, really getting that ready to just spring out of the gate when the plaza opens. And I mean, a lot of the work around the groups that we need to engage is really based on who's already come forward as part of the pilot, who's already using the space, who's already indicated interest in wanting to be there. And those are the groups we'll start with.
Great, thank you.
Councillor DeGenova.
I have a few questions about the accessibility on parking, especially. I understand that you have briefly touched on it in your answer to Councillor Carr's question, but I was just wondering if how many parking spots were being removed, accessible parking spots, because I know parking is mentioned in the report, and how many new accessible parking stalls you were considering creating after consultation with the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee.
So currently we are just dealing with one stop. To give you a bit of a brief history, one of those locations was actually located within the plaza. So during the pilot phase, we actually relocated that close to the Shoppers Drug Mart, which was referenced, is slightly east of there. So the location we're looking at is actually immediately west of Butte Street. And rough numbers, it's currently about 150 meters away. This new location would be in the order of 35 or 40. So significantly closer, appreciating this is a destination. And also when we're looking at locations to find for disability parking spaces, we look to leverage opportunities like existing ramps so that people can easily get access to the sidewalk for those people. So.
And just to be clear, this would be a new parking stall, not a parking stall currently existing in the Shoppers Drug Mart lot.
No, we're looking at street.
Oh, we're looking at street parking. Okay, when you said near Shoppers Drug Mart, I just wanted to clarify because they do have their own lot in there, so we are looking.
In these cases, we're referring just to on-street locations under the city's management, but we also wanted to explore options to work with Shoppers Drug Mart to locate one on their property as well to kind of add additional benefit.
Okay. I also had a question regarding some of the concerns that were brought up by some of the correspondence we received on it being a public space and being free to everyone, and it is, unless the area is permitted for a special or private event where it's being ticketed or it's exclusive to a certain group. So I'm just wondering, given I'm sure the popularity of this space in this neighborhood, if there will be a limit put on how many days that the plaza will be able to be permitted. I just hope it, I suppose my concern is that if we have groups wanting to purchase a permit and rent it every weekend, then it really is redundant of being a public space. So I'm just wondering what the limitations on that would be.
So when a group receives a permit, it's simply to be in the space to have an event. And when the City of Vancouver issues the special event permit, it's really for a public event. And so there will be no permit issued for a ticketed event in the plaza. That is one of the guiding principles, that it will remain open to the public.
Okay, open to everyone. Okay, that's good to know. I know some of our spaces we allow for that with celebration of lights or, certain areas. So it's very nice to know that. Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much. Well, seeing that there's no more questions, I'd like to move the recommendations A through E, and then speak to those.
Okay.
So to begin with, I really want to give a great deal of thanks to the staff on this. I know how dedicated they've been. I know the amount of work they've put in, and I know how excited you've been about this project and carrying it forth from here. And as you have become more and more excited, the whole community has become excited, and that's obvious as that's grown, that now all of a sudden we're talking about this being a model throughout Vancouver, which is not only amazing, it's quite unusual for something like this. So first of all, to the staff, and as you said, Mr. McNanny, there seems to be 4 who have put in a huge amount of time, and I know John has been to all our committee meetings and presentations, and I really appreciate the work. Also, I of course want to thank those who came to speak tonight, and thank the GLBTQ committee for its work and representing the community and bringing forward, and particularly Drew for all that you've done on this. and the Disabilities Committee, I've already thanked, and the Seniors Committee. And then all the stakeholders. There's been so much consultation, and the results of which are very obvious with this fantastic support. I also want to thank Drew for just starting hers off remembering Jim a bit, because that's what this was all about. And Jim and I, of course, went back a long way, and I still find it hard to believe he's not around. I go into Little Sisters from time to time, and I'm looking for him, and then I kind of realize he's not there, and the place doesn't seem the same, and I see lots of younger people in there, and I want to say, did you know Jim? You know, this place is so different without Jim, and it's not, but it is for me, and it's so unfortunate that he had that accident and died so prematurely, because he definitely, as has been said so many times, is a hero in the community and was a real role model, and for me, a good friend. So he would be very pleased with what's emerged, although very surprised. He would never have expected anything named after him, let alone a plaza in the middle of the Davie village. But he'd be so pleased about the inclusivity of this plaza and what it's representing, and the potential, and the museum that will carry not just his legacy, but many others. And I feel myself getting a little bit emotional here, as was the gentleman earlier. I understand that emotion. So this report is everything and more that I have dreamed of, and I look forward to the implementation. I'm very satisfied with the staff's report, or rather the staff's input as to the timing on this, and I know that this will continue on in the way that it's been laid out with our capital plan next year. So that's all I have to say about it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Affleck.
Well, it's hard to follow Councillor Stevenson. You know, his relationship with Jim Davie was significant, and his role in this plaza has been important, and I think we all support this idea. I think it's a great celebration of a man, and what he did for our city. It's also going to be a great space for somebody who lives downtown like myself. I spend a lot of time up on Davie Street with friends, and to have another space that's going to be active and interesting, it's going to be great. If I can ask just a slight friendly amendment, Councillor Stevenson, on E, if we can add, I mean, I trust that staff are going to report back with a yellow memo, as they've mentioned, and a full report, but in E, if we can just add in 2016 after council, in the fifth word there, so that staff report back to council in 2016, as they've said they would. If that would be friendly, that would be, they've said that they would, but why not throw it in there so that, great. So absolutely support it. I'm looking forward to going up there and enjoying the space. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And well, I'll echo all the thanks. Councillor Stevenson, I think, laid out a complete list, and so I'll echo those thanks to everyone who's been involved, and significant involvement from so many people who care not only about Jim and his legacy, but about the opportunity here to create something much bigger and broader, which I think it really connects back to my time and my memories of Jim, of someone who, in the way of a leader, would start something, he'd get something going, he was a catalyst, and lo and behold, in a matter of time, it would turn into a big community effort and a citywide or national or even international movement. It would take on much bigger proportions, and that's what this feels like. We've yet again, with the legacy of Jim involved, it's not really about Jim. Acknowledges his incredible contributions here in the city, but it's really about the community, and that's who's making this real and creating something really special. From the work that's being done by our city staff to all the people in the community, all the leaders who are stepping up to seize this opportunity to create a great public space And I love this concept of making it kind of the best of all possibilities of plaza and public space and park and outdoor museum, all these, it's somehow integrating all these concepts into one whole. I don't know quite how we're going to accomplish all that, but I believe it when I hear the words and see the way it's taking shape. It's so much more than that initial idea of, well, a nice space and a legacy, and it's grown into so much more because the community's come together and put so much into it. Lots of great ideas and lots of leadership from the community, and creating something that I believe is as others have said, is going to be a model for other public spaces in the city, and to really take all of this to another level. And I fully expect that many other cities will look at this and as a great model. Once again, Vancouver, from the community scale and a neighborhood passion for taking it to the next level, I think is going to be very influential with what we do in this space and around the neighborhood. So I'm really thankful for the great leadership and for the guy that helped get it all started. I'm sure he's fully aware of all the shenanigans that are playing out in his name. So thanks to everyone for all your great work, and we'll look forward to this coming back and being able to celebrate in that space in the new year.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks. Thanks so much. And my thanks too. My thanks to everyone who came, the committees, GLBTQ2+, and people with disabilities for all that work and all the staff input. I want to really particularly thank of all the organizations and the individuals who have worked since the time of the pilot, because I remember when the pilot happened, there were a lot of people who came with concerns, and there was controversy around sort of what was happening at night and, the programming and that kind of thing. Well, I am just blown away by how much work has happened and what a great proposal we have in front of us now that I think really captures what people want in a public place and as a memory and tribute to Jim Diva. So I'm very grateful to all the work and I know that's just beginning. I'm very grateful to the West End BIA for taking on that partnership around programming, and to the donors. There's some generous donations that have already come in. I know there'll be more for the museum. It'll take that to get that museum going. So I encourage anyone out there who's interested to put that, put that money forward. It's for a very, very good public cause. And just that for me, the fact that this, it really kind of captures what I think is so fantastic about the West End in terms of welcoming community, inclusivity, accessibility, vibrancy. And I'm a West Ender. I know why we're the best neighborhood in the world by vote, that this will just make it better. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova.
I'd like to start by thanking staff, and it's no small feat that you've embarked on, and I hope that you're all feeling a sigh of relief if the vote goes the way I think it's going to. You can all enjoy the Christmas holidays and come back, and now we're going to have everything done by 2016. Councillor Affleck has added that, we're sure, but I just want to say thank you. This is a project that I'm sure when it came to all of us, and it actually first came to me as a park board commissioner when I was sitting on the park board through that consultation process, and I have to say it was overwhelming because here's a man whose legacy, Mr. Jim Diva, we want to honor, we want to recognize, and he had big shoes, and it certainly needed to be a space that was worthy not just of him but of the whole community, and a place where they can celebrate, where everyone can celebrate. And I think that you've gone above and beyond. I think it's going to be a fun space, exciting, inclusive, cool. I mean, those are some of the words that come to mind when I think about this. Also, I have to say, I'd like to thank all of the community advisory committees, the city advisory committees, the LGBT, and I'm so sorry, I hope I'm getting it right, the LGBTQ plus, is it plus? 2+. Sorry, I've heard it so many different ways tonight. 2+ committee. I'd also like to thank, I'd also like to thank the Seniors Advisory Committee, and I'd like to thank the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee. It's really wonderful to see all of the committees come together so collaboratively, and to see this be the first public space in Vancouver where we're going to have a public accessible washroom. From my knowledge, it will be one of the first public toilets in Vancouver. So it just adds another level of accessibility and inclusion in our community. So I'm really excited to see the space finished. Thank you to all who've been involved. Thank you, Jacques and Jill and Drew. And I know that Colleen McGuinness and the Seniors Advisory Committee have also been involved. So I'd just like to echo my thanks, and I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer.
Yeah, I feel compelled to add a brief word. I mean, Councillor Stevenson and Mayor Robertson said quite a lot of what I might said. I would say, because someone was referencing, it's true, I can't imagine Jim, in fact, I think he would have been somewhat annoyed at the physical legacy concept, because it just really wasn't, he was not a man who needed statues built in his name, but what he would be so extremely pleased about is the process legacy that he's left behind on both the West End Mayor's Advisory Committee and LGBTQ at that time. How many times did we hear him say, why can't we just whatever it was, right? Make space more inclusive, make it more accessible, find ways to bring business, community together. And somehow in less than a year, this has all happened in his name because people were so motivated to create that legacy. So I think there's a very short list of things that you get to take to the beyond the grave, and that kind of a way of motivating community is really a legacy that speaks a lot to somebody's life. So thanks to everyone for letting us be here less than a year later making this happen, because it feels really good to know that could have been different, right? This could have been a big fun fight, whatever. That would have been a very bad way to honor Jim's legacy. So it's exciting to see everybody bringing that good faith into a process and revolutionizing public space as a result.
I see you there again, Mayor Robertson. Did you, or was that a phantom? Okay. Councillor Louis.
Well, there's not much to add. I think Councillor Stevenson did say it very well, but just listening to everyone speak on this issue, I think really does speak and honor Jim's work. But my recollection of Jim was, no, I think it's important that Jim was not plain spoken. Well, he was plain spoken, and he would often come to myself. I remember having a meeting with Jim once with Tim, and he was, well, just say it bluntly, he was giving us shit for stuff. And he would, because he would. And that's how he got a lot of his stuff done over the years. And over my time on council now, I recall many meetings and many discussions over that time where he would tell us how it should be. It's not dissimilar to what Andrew was saying, Councillor Reimer was saying, in terms of, well, here's how, why can't we do these things? And you should just go ahead and do it. And so it is appropriate that we've taken quick action, because that's what Jim would have wanted on this. There was some controversy, which is what I think Jim would have wanted a little bit of as well. It was not, didn't want everything to be easy. He wanted I think he liked a little bit of a fight, and now we have it. So, you know, this is a nice fitting way to move forward with this. So just my few words.
Thanks, Councillor Louis, and I agree with all that's been said. I just sometimes worry when the concept of museum comes up that people think it's over and it's time to sort of write the epitaph, and I don't think that would be consistent with Jim Diva's, what I know of him and his activism, and I'm sure that that's one of the tricky balances the community will have to strike. So, okay, I think we're ready on this one to go to a voting queue for the recommendations as amended. It was moved by Councillor Stevenson, so please indicate your view. And I'm shocked to say that it's unanimous. That's great. Thanks to everybody for all that hard work. The somewhat subdued reaction is due to the 12 hours we've been here. Okay, we have one last piece to do here, which is the referral from yesterday, the Urban Forest Strategy Action Item. And we're looking to hear from Mr. Randy Pooter. It was in the motion. Oh, yeah, in the council part, yeah. Is Mr. Pooter here, please? Mr. Randy Pooter. Going. Okay, folks, I'd like you to please move your conversations outside. We have a little bit more work to do. I'm not seeing the speaker here. Mr. Pooter, last chance. Okay, not seeing any speakers. Are there any more questions for staff? We don't want to rush to. We don't want to rush to judgment here. Now, come on. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move the queue up to Councillor Reimer so we can hear what she'd like to tell us.
I'm really sorry. I really don't have any questions. I feel like I'm extraordinarily familiar with the material and am extremely supportive of moving forward with it. And I do, I'll move the recommendations in the report, Chairperson. From, in case anyone's lost the plot, the urban forest strategy action items. And to say that very briefly, like, having had the opportunity to look around really the world over the last year at what's being accomplished with urban forest policy, this is a globally significant step forward on the urban forest strategy. It is a regionally insignificant step on the ticketing and payment in lieu. So it's an interesting sort of bookend. So I'm pleased the action items in B, C, and D are bringing us, at least up to the average in the region. But really very excited about the platform that gives us to really move forward with the urban forest concept. So pleased to see the change made from last year, 2014, how much of a difference that's made, 2,500 trees. I know there was some pain involved in the implementation of it, but now that it seems to be running a lot more smoothly, I think every year that gain keeps accumulating, and this added on to it. We now know how to implement well and have that opportunity to see even bigger gains moving forward. So with that, happy to move.
Thank you. Mayor Robertson?
Yeah, well, big thanks to the...
Oh, sorry. I went first, didn't work, then it did. You should be good now.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and big thanks again to staff for all the work on this. I'm really impressed with the extent of the work and all the different expertise that's been pulled in, and it sounds like we've got more and more expertise and the partnership with UBC Forestry and all kinds of strengths to it, reaching out to other cities. So lots of promising pieces, and I think I flagged concerns in some of my questions around making sure we get to that target. I would love to see us hit the 150,000 by the end of this term, given we know we're behind the 8 ball with the canopy disappearing. So we'd love to see things ramp up, and if we can go beyond that to 2020, even better. But I think we should be really ambitious with this and not put all of the eggs in the private land basket. That was what I flagged a concern around, but trying to get 80,000 trees planted on private land, which may happen. Maybe we've certainly seen little bits of huge interest from citizens to plant trees. Hopefully we can see real success in this next year, that it's the tipping point for getting the numbers in. And just an ongoing plug for more fruit trees. We hear that on, and we're seeing other cities do it, and more urban orchards being planted and parks in different cities. And I do get bugged about native species as well on a regular basis. That you wouldn't recognize the streets of Vancouver as being in the Pacific Northwest or in the Cascadia region because we have so many exotic trees in our streets. sticks out from many of the other communities surrounding us that are full of native species. So those are just a couple of points, but I'm really encouraged by the great work done in general, and this is a really impressive body of work that's starting to take root, and looking forward to seeing real advances this year. So thanks for all the good stuff.
Councillor Carr, you want to add a few words here?
Yes, I do. Thanks. Just to say that I'm very happy to have heard, in response to my questions and as we moved along in the report, the greater attention that is starting to be played, and that will be more so played, on maintaining our forests, and that the beginning, but the maintenance is, well, that's the bulk of it, and to keep them alive over time. And the report that will come back to us this coming year that will include sort of the impact of climate change and the drought last summer, so that we can become even better at that planting of the right species and maintaining. I just want to also note that there are citizens who are really keen and active, and I'm happy to hear we're encouraging them around watering and that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's, for me, the partnership with the public is key, and their support around maintaining that forest in the future.
Okay, so we're ready to vote on that one. Moved by, all the recommendations moved by Councillor Reimer. Councillor Dijova, we're still having trouble getting your vote in here. There we go. Okay, that's unanimous. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stevenson. Yeah, well, both. There we go. Okay, we've got all the sheep in the fold now, I think. No, you're good. No, that was unanimous. I think we should just call it a day and not do that again. So that's the end of this meeting. Mayor Robertson, would you do the honors, please, and make it official? Oh, you need a microphone too?
Mic check.
You want everything?
Okay, we're ready to convene our last regular council meeting of 2015 to deal with the recommendations and actions for today's Standing Committee on City Finance and Services. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Robertson is in the chair. All members of council are present, with the exception of Councillor Jang and Councillor Ball, who is on medical leave. You have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Oh yeah, first of all, we need a motion to adopt the Standing Committee's recommendations. Movers, Councillor Meg, seconder. Anyone want a second? Councillor Carr will second. You guys can arm wrestle over it. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Councillor Deal, did you have a motion? Thank you. I was at the Coast Guard, Kitsilano Coast Guard base opening this morning. Thank you. Moved a seconder for that. Seconder, Councillor Stevenson. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And we need a motion to adjourn.
What about the grants?
I think we adopted the recommendations, so the grant's part of that. Correct?
Well, I move we adjourn then, sure.
We need a motion to adjourn this council meeting. Finish the year off. Councillor Meggs and a seconder.
I'll second.
And Councillor Stevenson will second. Any debate, discussion? Councillor Affleck, you have the floor. Just kidding. You want to debate adjournment?
May I say just
all those in favor?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
All those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? That carries. Acting City Manager, as we close the building down.
I just wanted to say, after 2 days of, I think it was 11 hours, 12 hours, just the last few months have been amazing, and we've just over the year achieved just a ton, and I just wanted to acknowledge just how amazing it's been to all the stuff that's been done in this chamber in the last year as we adjourn for the entire year. So thank you on behalf of all of our staff for all of the amazing work, Council.
Thank you. Thanks to staff, and it's been a busy year.
Merry Christmas.
Very productive year. Happy holidays.